Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Lane. We are going to be looking at our first game in the Champions League since 2023. It is the home match against Villareal tomorrow night. It's actually going to be a game that may see us reunited with the former player Juan Foyth as well, the Argentinian. So it will be quite nice to see what kind of reception he'll get coming back to Spurs for that one. So first game in a long while in the Champions League. To be honest, missed it, and it is going to be quite emotional hearing that Champions League music at the start of the game tomorrow. 8 o'clock kickoff. If you're going to the game, fantastic. Hopefully, it is a good night for you. And if you can't and you're in the UK, then it is watchable through Prime. I think it's via subscription. It might be TNT or Discovery or whoever it is, but you can watch the game if you're not able to make it, but you will have to have a subscription for that. So that's how you can do it in the UK. Obviously, if you're out with the UK, there's probably other alternatives for you. So let's have a quick look at some of the stats in this game because there's a few popped on. I thought it would be quite interesting to change it up for the Champions League stuff just because they're normally against teams that we won't see very often, apart from Bodo Glimt and Frankfurt, who we've seen last year. But for everyone else, there's a lot of new things for us here. So let's look at the first four games that each club have played competitively. So for us, we've won 3, lost 1. Villareal have won 2, lost 1, drawn 1. So we're not too far off each other in terms of games played, won, etc. So it looks like it could be quite a close tie off of that. We then look at some of the other wee bits and pieces. Both teams have scored 8 goals in those 4 games. We've conceded 1, they've conceded 3. Our biggest wins for us were the 2-3-0 victories, one against West Ham at the weekend and Burnley at the opening of the season. Villarreal's was a 5-0 win over Girona. I think that was at home as well. So both teams are very, very capable of scoring goals, which should be quite good for us at home in this one. So hopefully we'll get a few goals, build up a nice wee goal difference, and hopefully walk away with all the points in this one for the league setup in the Champions League. I'm not going to go over the way the whole thing works because we already covered that in the initial Champions League League Cup video we did a while back. So if you're not familiar with it, go check that out or just go and have a look at the Champions League website and you'll get all of that information yourself. Now, we have played each other before, but not in league competition in Europe or in cup competition. It was in a friendly at Tottenham, and we lost 4-1 to Villareal. So realistically, the head-to-head, they are ahead by 100%. Only one game, though, and it was a wee while ago. But at the end of the day, they have managed to put 4 past us at home. Hopefully, we will not see a repeat of that, especially with Thomas Frank as the manager and the tactical nuances and awareness that we've seen over the last couple of games. If it had been Ange Postecoglou, I could well believe it, especially some of the opening games from the Europa League. Going forward, Villareal are a pretty solid side, so it would be interesting to see how that would have lined up had he been in charge for the openers. However, it's not. It's Thomas, and we are looking reasonably strong. We've seen a lot of tactical switches and formational changes, which has actually surprised everybody. Certainly, the game against West Ham, we've seen a few players starting that game who actually massively performed throughout. Bergvall being the key one there. Savi making his debut in on the left, and we might actually see the same thing happening again tomorrow night. Right, so in terms of Spurs playing against Spanish competition in any of the European leagues, we do not have a particularly great record. We have won 1 European game against Spanish opposition out of 13, 5 draws, 7 losses. So if you look at it from a stats perspective, things are not looking particularly good for us in terms of that. But we've changed a lot of things so far this season in terms of how we played, as well as picking up a lot of victories against teams that last season we were getting pumped by. So things are on the up. We do have a manager that is very tactically astute as well. So hopefully we'll see a really good display and we'll come away with some goals and all the points in that as well. In terms of European opening games, we have only won 2 out of 7. 2 draws and 3 losses as well. So our opening games are not particularly great for us in European competition. But in the Champions League up until 2023, going back from, I think it's 2013, 2014, we have progressed reasonably well. There's only been one place where we haven't moved out of group stages. So hopefully a good showing all in will see us move on beyond the initial league stage. But we're up against some really, really heavy competition across the board for those spots. But there's no reason why we can't do it if we can play the way we have done against the big teams, Man City. Even when we played against PSG in the Super Cup final, we could show that we could stand toe to toe with the big boys. And now that a lot of the team have gotten a lot of match fitness and games under their belt, then we shouldn't see that last 10-minute collapse. And I'm actually looking quite forward to the PSG return a little bit later on in this campaign. But let's have a look at the stats in terms of Thomas Frank. It is his first Champions League competition, so it'll be good to see him on the night, his coaching staff, and actually a lot of that tactical analysis going on from higher up in the stadium while the game's ongoing, and see how that feedback comes into the game throughout the match. I keep saying it, if you do get the chance to see what's going on the sidelines in the middle of the game, especially when things start happening, have a look at what the coaches are doing and coming out onto the line and dealing with their areas as well. It's really good to watch, certainly from a football. I never really took much notice of it last season with Ange because we never really saw it. He was always standing at the sideline with his hands in his pockets, and the coaching staff were very rarely on their feet coming out. So this season has been quite an eye opener in terms of seeing that work on the sidelines, as well as what you've seen in the game against West Ham. The tactical analysts are sitting watching the game, noticing West Ham were very light at the back corners, sometimes not even put anyone there. And if we look at Papa Matasar's goal, that ball that came in from Savi from the corner and that free header at the back. I mean, I seen a video the other day, and it was a fan angle, so it was a bit of footage taken by someone in the stadium watching it, and actually puts it into an even better light, showing how poorly that back post was defended through it, and especially for that goal. The front half of it is literally claret, and the whole back end is white, with Sarr sitting even further back at that point. And you see him, he's just kind of strolling into that space, and no one has picked him up. So that's the type of thing I'd like to see, hopefully, in the Villareal game, is that while the game is ongoing, that those people are picking up the little bits of things going on the positioning sense for Villareal, maybe areas where certain players are not picking up runs or following in with their players, and then relaying that down to the bench where we can then start to exploit it in the middle of games, or at least into the second half, depending on when and where it actually happens. So it'll be quite interesting to see how Thomas Frank takes that into the Champions League. And as I've said, he has surprised us so far this season with formational changes at the start of games, as well as the team selection for it. So it's looking pretty exciting in terms of seeing actually what is he going to put out tomorrow, what's the lineup going to be, who are the people are going to be, and we'll touch on that towards the end as well. But in terms of European competition, he has been involved, although not in the competitive stages, but he has been through 10 Europa League qualifiers with Brøndby, with a decent record, 3 wins, 4 draws, and 3 losses. So he's got some European experience to a degree, but not in the competitive stage where there's a hell of a lot more pressure on him. And especially at a team like Spurs, Brøndby can easily get away with, you've tried your best, you get in, you either qualify or you win some games and you go out before you actually hit those stages, which is what he has happened, but he has been there before. But what we have seen from that point to now with Brøndby to Spurs is that tactical evolution, working his way through Brentford, creating a really solid team there, and then moving into Spurs, and we're actually seeing that same evolution taking place in the team with exactly the same players that we had last season, playing and performing so much better than what they have done before. So seeing Thomas Frank making those changes at us, then I'm really hoping we're in for a really, really good campaign overall, not just in the Champions League, but the Premier League and the 2 cup competitions at home as well. So let's have a look at some of the other bits and pieces in terms of stats for Spurs. We have had 42% of our Champions League goals both scored by Kane and Son. So that is 37 goals out of a total of 89, which is a huge contribution. But what it really shows is how much work they really did for Spurs when we had the both of them playing together, especially in those European competitions. And that's all since 92, 93. Richie is the only player in the squad right now that has scored more than 2 goals for us, or more than 1 goal, and he's actually on 2 goals. So, in terms of goal scoring in competitions like the Champions League, it's not looking too hot for us. But Richie has played very well so far this season. And if we look at some of the new players that have came in, then we're already seeing in the press conference that Thomas Frank has said that Kolo Muani is fit enough to play 90 minutes. But can he play the 90 minutes at the intensity expected for the whole of that time? And the answer was no, he won't. But he will be involved at some point in that game and will make his debut for Spurs. So he said that he does see him playing mainly as a striker, but he does have the ability to play on the left and the right. So, depending on how the game goes, we could see Richie coming off at some point with Colo coming on and playing up front. But we might see him starting the game with Richie coming on a bit later on. Remember, we have the away game against Brighton at the weekend, and then we have the League Cup against Doncaster after that on the following Wednesday. But I think for the Doncaster, what we might actually see is if Moani's fit, we might see him start, or we'll actually see Tell to continue to get that game time in the cup competitions, probably as a bit of compensation for not making the Champions League squad. So I do think that we will see Savi play today, and I think we might see him starting in that number 10 role. So a decent debut against West Ham at the weekend. He got the assist from the corner. His balls coming in and the way he was playing was really good. It's not that he had a poor game at the weekend. He was pretty solid, but nothing really exceptional. But when you have a look at the way he was celebrating some of those goals, you can already tell that he's fully into the Spurs team. He's right into the club, and he's really fighting for the guys in and around him. So seeing that some of those goal celebrations really put a smile on my face, especially seeing that really over the top reaction at the side of the pitch when we had scored. So I expect we'll see him in the number 10 role, and Solanke is out for this game. He will not be taking any part whatsoever, and we might still be looking at another couple of weeks before we actually see him getting more game time and being fit enough to be included in that matchday squad. But by that point, he will be up against Richie, who we already know Thomas Frank has said that's his number 9. That's the guy in the pole position right now. Moane is going to be playing game time up until that point as well. So if he gets a good run out, scores a few goals, or starts getting creativity and part of that as well, then we're going to see Solanke dropping from what he was at the end of last season, number 1, to number 3. But all of that competition is really good, especially for strikers, because they thrive on it, or they should do. And it also means that we'll see a lot more rotation throughout the 4 competitions as we move on. So in terms of looking at all of that, what is the starting lineup going to be? I think we will be looking at a 4-2-1-3. I just think it suits the squad a bit better, and certainly against European competition, especially the Spanish, sometimes you get a wee bit more movement in and around the middle of the park. So being able to have that kind of freedom of movement, as well as having that kind of defensive cover, I think plays well to our strengths, and it should lend very well in a home game tomorrow, because we really want to be coming out of the starting blocks and really hammering Villareal and trying to get as many goals in here as we possibly can, especially if we can get that goal early on as well. So in goal, I don't think we'll see any change from the Champions League. I think we'll definitely see Vicario start. A reasonably decent game for him as well at the weekend, although nothing really much to talk about in terms of him having to make saves other than the Mickey van de Ven mistake. Kinski, I think actually what we'll end up seeing is he will probably get his first start in the game against Doncaster, so solid option on the bench. Back lineup of the back 4, I can't see it changing from what started against West Ham. I think at the moment that is our strongest back 4 of Porra at right back, Van de Ven and Romero in the middle, and Spence on the left-hand side. However, Ndogi has been getting some game time in, and I think if there is a slight possibility we might actually see Ndogi starting that game with Spence on the bench, even just resting him for the game against Brighton at the weekend. But we'll wait and see, or we could end up seeing Spence start, Ndogi coming on, and then potentially Ndogi getting the start at the weekend against Brighton. So we've got a wee bit of flexibility there, but I think that's probably the back 4 that we'll start with. I think he'll want a strong squad and first 11 out there for this game. I don't think we'll see some of those tactical changes, but it all depends on what his analysis team has come fed back and saying, well, these are the positions that I think we should be strong in. These are the people we should play for this one, based on how the opposition might line up, and how we want to kind of deal with their main threats as well. On top of that, in the midfield, I think we might see the changes there. I think we'll see Bentancur start. I do think he was rested against West Ham at the weekend, specifically for this game. So I think what we might see is Polinia maybe sitting on the bench for this, especially after that bad tackle of the weekend. Even just a wee rest, because I think having that squad rotation will be good. And I think we'll probably see Polinia sit on the bench. I think what we'll have is we'll have Sarr starting in there with Savi in at that number 10 slot. I'm kind of hoping that's what we'll go with. It's very bad, because if we look at Bergval's performance, and he was man of the match for me, and I think a lot of people he was at the weekend, it is a bit of a shame to then put him onto the bench. But I think our midfield is just so strong at the moment. It's very difficult to try and even think about who could play where and when and against who. And as fans, we always want to see the strongest 11 play, but the strongest 11 can't always play 60 to 70 games in a season. So that rotation has to be really strong. And I think certainly against West Ham, that was the strongest bench I can remember seeing in such a long time. So I think we've really good options there in the midfield to be able to rotate and swap through that. So that's my starting three in the kind of middle of the park. And I think that will work quite well. As I say, it's a shame. For me, it would be a shame for Bergval, just because of the amount of work and how well he played against West Ham. But we've already seen that Thomas Frank is very happy to do and make those hard decisions. I mean, look at it. Gray didn't even make the squad for the game at the weekend, and Moani was on the bench and didn't even get onto the pitch. So he's not afraid to make those choices and either letting people on or not bringing them into the team or the first 11. So, those decisions are going to be made throughout the whole of the competition, as well as everything else that we're playing in as well. And that kind of leaves the forward line. I think we'll see Johnson making a return to the left wing. Savi did quite good, but I think if we can manage having Savi playing in that number 10, then Johnson just gives us that wee bit more attacking impetus coming down the left-hand side. The only problem I have with Johnson is that if it goes against us, he really struggles to track back and mark his men and get tackles in. And I think it's a really weak point in his game. And you have to remember, he's only young. He's only, 21 or 22. So, this is the kind of thing that over time can be built up on and strengthen that. And as we know, Thomas Frank really favours him as a player as well. So I think we'll maybe see him starting on the left. I don't think you'd see Odobert in on that position, just simply because of the lack of game time. Johnson has started very well at the start of the season, and then obviously he's rested him at the weekend, and I think he was specifically rested so that he could start the game today. We're looking at Richie up front, as I said. Solanke's out injured, Tail isn't in the squad, and Moani isn't fit enough to start a game or to give you a full 90 minutes of the intensity that will be expected of him in that role for the Champions League. But as I say, I think we'll see him being introduced at some point, maybe with 20, 30 minutes to go, to come on and then give Richie that rest for the weekend as well. And then obviously Kudus on the right, because I think definitely after the weekend against West Ham, the guy's got absolute speed in his boots. He can run all day, and he seems to be super fit as well. And when you see the dog's abuse he got against West Ham at the weekend and still managed to play the way he did and really push himself throughout, then I don't think we can see him being dropped either. He's in a very fortunate position, I think, because as the right wing, it's very strong with him there, but he doesn't really have that competition to force him out of that space. And where else can you play him? You could play him on the left, but he's not very strong there. You could play him in that number 10 role if you really needed to, but why would you? We have Savi there. Bergval can play it, and Sarr has actually been doing excellent in that position as well. So why would you move him out from that right-hand side? It would weaken us dramatically on that bit. I know Johnson can play out that side, and Tel could if he was in the squad, as well as Odobert. But again, why would you move him from that wing when he does so much damage from there? So that's my first 11. As I say, I've noted a couple of people might switch in and out from those, but I think that's probably our strongest 11 for it, as well as being able to rest some guys. They'll all be on the bench that we can bring on if we need to make those changes. And certainly if we go a couple of goals up, if Polinia's on the bench, we can always bring him on to kind of steady that ship a bit more, tighten things up in front of the back four, and then play our way through the game. And I think at some point we'll probably find this if we do manage to go a couple of goals up, we might even see those changes being made with the Brighton game away. And that's going to be a tough game for us as well. We're bringing Danso on and going to either that three at the back, or you might see Romero or Van de Ven coming off and getting a rest on top of that too. So yeah, do you know what? It's really difficult when I sit and look at what type of formation will we deploy. But what's really hard is looking at our squad and going, who are we going to start? Who is going to be playing where? Because it's, as I said, it is now such a strong squad for Spurs that when you look at that bench, there are so many options there that can come off to really strengthen. And we're almost at the point where we're strengthening position for position without any real drop in quality for that. So it's really good to see that now, and certainly we're going to need it. We've got good, strong squad depth, as well as I say, we've got so many tactics that we're seeing, formations being played, and it's not just, well, we're going to be playing these guys, so that's what we'll play. We're actually being able to see those changes come into play while the game is ongoing in the middle of a half, from first half to second half. And we're, as I said, that West Ham game was, an analyst watching and going, right, they're not picking people up at the back post. If you can get the players moving into those positions and into those spaces, then we might see far more tactical play and balls coming in and being really strong and scoring goals. The only one thing I would say is the game against West Ham, we scored essentially three set pieces, or from three set pieces. We didn't really open them up enough to give us those opportunities in front of goal. So, as I said in the last video and the analysis of the previous game against West Ham there, I want to see us opening things up a bit more. And while, I'm not going to complain, we scored three goals, and three goals are goals. You take them whatever way you find them. But you want to be able to not just have to rely on set pieces all of the time, because if you come up against a team that's actually very clinical in terms of their defensive play, you're not going to get very many of them. So you just want to keep putting that pressure on into the middle, force them to make the tackles, concede the free kicks, give us penalties or corners or whatever. But we do need to start opening up and scoring more goals from open play. So I am super excited about this game on Tuesday. I think it's going to be a fantastic game to watch. I really wish I could be at the stadium to watch it as well, because it would be marvellous just hearing that music in the new stadium for the first time in a couple of seasons. So, yeah, if you're at the game, best of luck. Hope you have a great night. Hopefully, we will get a victory here. I think it's going to be really tight. Villareal are a very good team. They are very capable of scoring goals. As we said at the start of the video, they've scored 8 so far in their last 4, exactly the same as, but they are more prone to conceding goals than what we are too. So we've got that going for us, especially with being at home, and we've also kept 3 clean sheets out of that 4. So we are looking reasonably strong, and I would suggest we are the favourites for this game. But as I said, I think it's going to be really tight. I'm going to put it down to, it's either going to be 2-0 or 2-1 to us. I don't think it's going to be overly high scoring, but I think if we can get a goal really early, we might want to get a second and a third quite quickly as well, especially seeing how we played against West Ham at the weekend as well. But as I say, it's not to discount Villareal, but we do want to see that win in the first game. So that is a video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of the stats and the wee bits and pieces at the start. It's just some of the thing I'll probably do for most games, but certainly it's a bit more fun for the Champions League, because we get to talk about teams that we do not see very often, or at all. As I say, we've only played Villareal once, and that was in a friendly, and it wasn't particularly great for us, and we don't have a good record against Spanish teams in European competition. But those things can change, and hopefully that change starts tomorrow night. As I said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Come on, you Spurs.